everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Black Tea. I'm your host, Michelle Lawrence. So glad to be here today with another episode of the podcast series that is all about Black women in advertising, presented by Muse by Cleo. And today I'm happy to meet for the first time and welcome to the show, Amani Seay. Hi, Amani.
Hello, so glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Tell the people what you do and where you're based.
Yeah, so I am a creative strategist and I am based in Dallas, Texas, but I'm originally from Austin. So I'm definitely a Texas girl at heart and just love everything from the South. And I just love creativity. And so strategy for me was one of those things that always intrigued me, getting behind the why and understanding consumer psychology and all of those fun things. So I kind of just jumped into it and am so in love with what I do now. And so excited to be doing that in the tech space with T-Mobile. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's cool. And have you, so now you work at T-Mobile, have you always been client side in your ad journey, or have you spent some time at agencies? Take us down the memory lane.
So funny journey. I feel like my journey to advertising is definitely not the traditional route. In middle school and high school, I was tinkering with a site called Polyboard that no longer exists, where you could create fashion collages and all those things. And through that site, I got really into design and was hacking the site, and then got GIMP, the free software. So I started kind of in graphic design, just tinkering on my own. And as things evolved, family and friends were like, oh, design this for me, build a logo. So I kind of started in the graphic design route and had some internships, both brand side and with a design agency. And then from there, I kind of went to college and majored in advertising, popped post-college into an experience agency. So they were working on a lot of events and activations as a strategist. And then from there, I've gone pretty much brand side because I really wanted to get my hands on the tech and be able to craft, I think, a little bit more of the story. And so that gave me more opportunity. And agencies really just weren't dealing with me. So.
Okay, I want to get into that. But I want to ask you in terms of getting your footing in advertising, how did ageism impact you kind of getting started or feeling received by the industry?
Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of my challenges of trying to break into agencies came. I have a lot of experience, but I'm very young in the industry, and going into interviews and people look at my resume and the work I've done and the awards that I've won and things like that, when they look at, oh, but she only graduated 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it doesn't match up in their head and they can't seem to get past that. But for me, I'm like, when I look at advertising, creativity knows no age, creativity knows no bounds. And so having that experience of constantly, experiencing that and having people tell you and reject you and say, no, I don't think so, even though your work, your portfolio can prove you can do it, was always a challenge. And getting into the industry, I sought a lot of advice from different people. And one of those was my aunt, who worked in advertising. And she was going through the opposite experience, where she had been in the industry for so long that when people looked at her resume, they thought she wasn't creative anymore. So being able to bounce ideas off of her, being able to talk about that. And at the time, we didn't have a name for it. We didn't know what we were experiencing. We just knew that we both were being shut out of opportunities. Yeah. And so now there's more language around it to be able to discuss it, but seeing it from both perspectives of, I'm on the side where I'm getting judged and saying I'm too young. She's on the side where people are saying that she's too old or too experienced. And how do we combat that? And there isn't systems in place, and there's not really a structured support network to be able to discuss that and how it impacts Black women. I think for both of us was a struggle.
Yeah, that's so key, because it's one of those issues that our industry sort of struggles with at large, but we don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and specifically how it impacts Black women and their experiences as well. It's funny that people feel there's a right age to be most creative, which is really interesting. It sounds like it's a pretty small window that they're willing to accept you in.
By the time that you get it, you're almost out of it.
You're
Like
almost
that's,
to it,
it
right?
feels like a catch-22. Like you can never win. By the time you finally have enough experience for women, it's like, oh, now you might have too much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton syndrome. Okay. So, so you have mentioned, well, I'm glad you made your way in, you made your mark, and it sounds like you've been beasting, in the time that you have been in the industry. You mentioned that you'd won some awards and stuff like that. So, I mean, honestly, like achieving more in less time is a good thing. And, I would think. So congratulations on that.
For me, it's always been about really just making work that I'm proud of and that's impactful. And, it's not like I seek out awards and that's what I'm looking for. I think for me, I want to make culturally relevant work. And if that work also happens to be excellent, like, yeah, why not? Let's do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to that point, you say that you feel that Black women are uniquely equipped to be
Oh,
strategists. Why is that?
100%. I think Black women have been trained through our life experience. We have years of experience in how to listen to people who don't look like us, don't sound like us, and how to move in spaces where we're an outsider. And so being a strategist, a lot of what you do is listen to people and try to find that key insight, that key thing that stands out and makes them different. And how can we then capitalize off of that, pair it with the product or service, and make a brand, famous for what they do. And being a Black woman, I'm like, so many times we are just taught, hey, when you go into a space, you may have to adjust how you present yourself for you to be comfortable and for you to be accepted. And as a strategist, listening and being able to adapt to dynamic situations is what it's all about, as well as just building your intuition, being able to trust your own voice, know what that is, and move forward and take action on it. I think is something that we build through community. So much of our experiences are circling with other Black women, having intergenerational, conversations. And those, I think, really help us to build that just time to understand who we are as a person and be able to find that voice and listen to it and to trust our gut. I think Black women are so smart and able to do that and move and take action on that in so many ways that I'm just so impressed. And I'm like, there should be more Black female strategists. Like, this is what we do. We do it naturally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, now that I think about it, I know quite a few Black women strategists. So it's nice to see people realizing that in themselves and taking action on that. And here you are as well. But I mean, that all makes perfect sense to me. I'm not in strategy, I'm in creative, but I can't help but think that way sometimes because I do have those same experiences about, just kind of getting to the truth and being able to listen past or listen through people's differences and really try to hear the heart of what they're saying and what they're feeling. So it is something I think that follows us for better or for worse. And, if there's a way to kind of pivot that into a bag, then, that's great. Good for us. Strategists, get yours. So, you've also mentioned working with a psychiatric disability, which I think is great that you are transparent about that. What is one of your biggest strengths that you feel like you bring to your work as someone who's working with a psychiatric disability?
So for me, the way that my disability kind of presents in one of the symptoms is chronic insomnia. And it's something I actually didn't experience that symptom before the pandemic. I always knew that I had underlying kind of problems and issues that I worked on and went to a therapist and got help with, but it wasn't until the pandemic that it like triggered something else. And it was like, oh, I'm not sleeping throughout the night. I'm getting 2 hours of sleep, whatever that looks like. And so the work for me and having to be creative and having to still work like an 8-hour day, even though I'm running off of like an hour sleep for, months on end, that's something where I had to adjust how I approach the process, as well as really get in tune with like what self-care looks like. So for me, I think one of the biggest strengths that came out of it was being able to come up with new ideas quickly. Obviously, having kind of a shortened sleep time means that my brain isn't functioning at the same level it should be, which means my focus hours get real tight because during the day, you just start to lose, like anyone, as the day goes on, you get tired. But for me, it's so much more acute. So I think being able to sharpen, like, how do you ideate? How do you come up with ideas? How do you approach creativity is a system I had to develop for myself as a coping mechanism, but also something I now see as a tool where I'm like, okay, it doesn't take me all day to think of what this could be. I've learned how to shorten it for myself and also put care in place where that wasn't a part of my regular work routine. Throughout the day, going to the office and things like that, you kind of can forget about self a little bit and you're just like, I'm in go mode, I'm gonna do this, check off everything on my to-do list. But being able to build in time for meditation or stillness and those moments just to kind of rest yourself is something that I'm now incorporating as a part of my systems, that I'm like, this should have been a part of my workday from the start.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think this pandemic, ongoing as it is, has forced a lot of us to think about self-care and balance in new ways, in new and different ways, especially when your home is your workplace and your workplace is your home, and you don't have that line of demarcation like you used to. Finding ways in which to carve out time that is truly yours, has gotten harder for a lot of folks. People think, oh, work from home, you're chilling. And that was just never the experience for me in this entire 2-year journey. That has not been my experience. So it's nice to hear that, you're taking time out to sort of figure out how that looks for you, and how to make sure that, your work is happening and it's doing what it needs to do, but also so is your health, which is really great.
And I think for me, that was one of the kind of things as I was looking for new jobs and trying to figure out, where's the best place for me, I found that a lot of the brand side opportunities actually had more support when it came to like mental health and accommodations for disability than some of the agencies. And so thinking about, okay, how do I want to set up my career? How do I want to set up my life? For me, I was like, I want to go somewhere where I'm supported as an individual, not just for my like work contributions, but my whole self is more recognized and more supported. And so I was like, okay, I see a lot of tech companies moving in that space. I want to make sure that I position myself for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so you also, in addition to all of the awesome work that you have done through your day jobs, you're also the former chair of the Austin Community Police Review Commission. What is that? And what type of work did that entail?
Yes, so that is a city commission that works under the city manager in Austin. And it was basically came about through, there were lots of protests around police reform in the past couple of years, and Black Lives Matter, and cities trying to figure out, okay, well, we've got all this momentum, we've got all this energy, we've got people who want to get involved. What do we actually do? So a lot of our work was systems work, and we would go through and review police misconduct cases, as well as police policy, which is basically just their employee manual. Ours is like 900 or so pages. So it's a lot of text, but in there and getting to review some of these cases, I did it with a team of people who were all volunteers. So I'm so grateful to them. And what we would basically do is say, okay, something has happened in the city concerning police. Was there an error here as it relates to just their employee conduct? And then how can we fix it or prevent this from happening in the future? So a lot of it was data analysis. A lot of it was looking at, okay, how do these situations that we always see often play out in Black and Brown communities that aren't helpful? You don't walk away thinking, wow, the police did their job, that person felt helped. You feel like there's more harm contributed. How can we look at those situations and the steps that lead up to them, and hopefully put some interventions to stop that from happening or change that behavior?
Yeah. Wow. And so how did that commission work in tandem with the police? Was it like a how did you guys give them reports? Like what was the
Yeah.
interplay?
So for us, we worked with the police department. And in the beginning, there was a lot of tension, I think, just with the police union, which is a totally like convoluted construct. And a lot of people are like, what's the difference? There is a slight difference, but oftentimes they overlap. And so for us, it was really going in and trying to be good partners and say, we're not here to disrupt this whole system that you've got going on. What we're trying to do is the same thing that you all say you're trying to achieve. We want a safer city. We want a better city. We want for police work to create outcomes that are beneficial to everyone, not just to a few. So going in and thinking about that, what we did was when they would have misconduct, kind of cases come through, we would evaluate, we would get suggestions on policy, and we would deliver that back to the police chief. And then from there, he would, share that with his team, adopt some of our suggestions or say, no, we're not going to adopt some of the suggestions. And from there, we would kind of have a little bit of a negotiation conversation, and we'd also release those to the public. So we worked in partnership with the equity office in Austin, as well as another office that really partnered with us to help make sure that the conversations were going smoothly, because we're not a city entity, right? We're just a team of volunteers that the city appointed. So we operate a little bit outside of their system, which was great because we got to bring in different perspectives, but at the same time, trying to get momentum, trying to push new ideas through is a little bit hard when you've got that distance, so.
How did it come to be? Was it already a thing before you got involved? How did you find out about it? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so the city of Austin has had some form of community police review actually for the past, I believe, like 17 or so years. It may be more. And so for me, I've always wanted to be involved in systems work. I think that one-to-one kind of equity conversations are great. But for me, I'm like, if we can go in and do like a broad application and everyone can get it and start acting right and doing right, let's do that. Like, I want to have the most impact in things that are going to create lasting and sustaining change. And there were a couple of, I think, like news articles that were going out, of course, around some of the protests and talking about, hey, Austinites, this thing is coming up. You can sign up. And I was like, yes, sign me up. Where do I get involved? And from there was an interview process. And then, we met with a couple people around the city and they talked about what it was. And from there, we kind of formed a new commission. The reviews that we've had in the past, they had a lot less power in what they could do, how they gave their suggestions, et cetera, to the city. And so we kind of reformed that and created something new that gave us a lot more kind of a backbone and structure, as well as autonomy in how we operate. And we kind of launched what we'll call the new Police Review Commission.
Yeah. Wow. Bravo. That is some very important work. And it's really dope. It's, I wish more people in more cities knew about opportunities like that to get involved. So that's really great. And I love what you said about like wanting to get in and impact the systems and spread change more rapidly that way. Wholeheartedly agree. That's amazing work that you did. So
it's something that doesn't have a lot of visibility, and it's a lot like city council meetings. Like every city has those, and oftentimes they're at like kind of odd hours. And it's a lot of people doing behind the scenes work that you don't see, but that have widespread impacts across your local communities. So I do encourage people, commissions are always looking for volunteers, always looking for people to get involved that don't have a traditional background, that don't have a traditional view on government, that are looking to bring something new, inject new ideas, new energy. So I encourage everyone to look into what your local city is doing and get involved if you can.
You heard it, y'all. Well, I had just one last question that I like to ask everyone. Are there any Black-owned products or businesses or services that you are really loving right now that you would want to shout out?
Roland Martin's Black Star Network. I think so many Black creators are creating streaming apps and platforms that are Black owned that we definitely have to download and support. And a lot of them are free. So that's something that I also love to plug, is support Black tech.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that. It's been just such a pleasure talking to you. And I know everyone out there is going to be so blown away by your contribution to the industry and just to the world so far. So we can't wait to see what you do next. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just getting started and I'm ready to keep going. There's so much work to be done.
Always. And thank everyone out there who's watching. Thank you for watching Black Tea. Come back for more episodes at musebycleo.com/Black Tea. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at @SipBlackTea to find out about new and upcoming episodes. And that is it. We will see y'all next time. Bye.